back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
I guess Shannon Sharp was right when he said, Skip. Come on, Nate Diaz will never make 155 pounds again in his life. No, I'm just fucking around. Shannon Sharp was fucking delusional. Nate Diaz is a natural 155 pounder. That's where he's best at. That's where he shines at in my mind. So that is why this news being reported by ESPN.com's Brett Okamoto, who spoke with Tyron Woodley himself, is still surprising to me. Now, the news broke last night. Tyron Woodley versus Nate Diaz was being targeted for the main event of UFC 219, but what makes a lot more sense to the hardcore MMA fans would be Nate's older brother Nick Diaz versus Tyron Woodley. Now, Nick Diaz might be serving a suspension for his whereabouts failures with USADA, where with USADA you're supposed to tell him where you're going to be every day for random drug testing. I guess they showed look for Nick Diaz. He wasn't there because Nick Diaz does a lot of signings and club shows. He makes a lot of money, you know, with his appearances. So he might be scheduled to be somewhere one day, and when USADA shows up, the location of the venue might have changed. So it had nothing to do with an actual performance enhancing drug, but Nick Diaz is facing sanctions with USADA due to whereabouts failures. With that being said, that could be the reason that Nick Diaz is not getting the Tyron Woodley fight, because Nate Diaz has also said last year that he does not want to take his brother's fights. When his brother comes back, he's going to be fighting the GSPs and the Woodleys and the Silvas and stuff like that, so he doesn't want to take his brother's fights. That is why this was such a shock to a lot of us. Now, Tyron Woodley, he said he wants money fights and legacy fights, mainly legacy fights. It's not even really about the money with Tyron Woodley, but he definitely would take a payday over a legacy fight, I'm sure, versus Conor McGregor. Well, that's a legacy fight too, but this would be a legacy fight. And not to the hardcore fans. Hardcore fans might be like, man, get that shit out of here. You're fighting a Nate Diaz that's a lightweight. He has fought his last two fights at welterweight because they were versus Conor McGregor. But, I mean, the first fight was because it was short notice. So Nate Diaz, he had like 2 weeks to make 155 pounds, which is why they fought at 170. Conor was originally scheduled to face Rafael Dos Anjos at 155 pounds then. But since Nate Diaz had to replace him on short notice, couldn't make the cut in such short notice, they fought at 170. Well, when he shocked the world and beat Conor McGregor demanded the rematch at the same weight, 170 pounds. But that's the only reason really Nate Diaz's last two fights were at 170. Nate Diaz, to me, is a serious lightweight contender. When it was Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 3 was supposed to happen at lightweight, 155 pounds. So for Nate Diaz to be coming out of nowhere and taking this 170-pound title fight, it means a couple things. It means, for one, Nate Diaz has got a motherfucking man on deck. You better put some respect on the Diaz brothers' names. What the fuck are you time at? Coming out, I did not expect this, yo. All of these people that have been calling out Nate Diaz in the lightweight 155-pound division, Tony Ferguson, all of these dudes that have been saying this shit, and Nate Diaz has just been kind of silent. So, you know, a lot of people have been like, yo, why is Nate Diaz not taking these fights? Is he only wanting to fight Conor? So for him to step up and if he actually fights Tyron Woodley, I just did not see that coming. So, but I will say, another thing that this means, it sets up something huge. If Nate Diaz comes out and shocks me and shocks the world and beats the current welterweight champion, of course he's not going to shock the, diehard Diaz fans, the DDRs, the fucking, you know what I'm saying, Team Scrap Pack. Of course they're going to be rooting for Nate Diaz in this fight. And hey, I'm even going to probably be rooting. I like both. They're both two of my favorite fighters, so I'm not going to be rooting. But if Nate Diaz were able to come in here and beat Tyron Woodley and take the welterweight belt, that would set up one of the easily the biggest fight in MMA history. I'm talking about probably bigger than Conor McGregor GSP. If Nate Diaz wins the 170-pound belt and his next fight was versus Conor McGregor, that would mean Conor McGregor would be going for a third belt. Also, it would be the Nate Diaz trilogy in the same fight. Yo, that would be fucking I can't even fucking describe how big that fight would be. Nate Diaz versus Conor 3 for the welterweight belt. Conor, well, he wouldn't have the lightweight belt, but that wouldn't matter because the history he would be going for is the first person to win a title in 3 divisions. It wouldn't be at the same time, but he would still be the first champ. Damn, that's crazy. With that being said, man, Tyron Woodley went to ESPN. He said, I'm waiting on Nate Diaz. I'm healthy enough to fight Nate Diaz at UFC 219. If he signs the contract, it's on. I mean, the rumors we've seen Nate Diaz's team tweeting and deleting. Diaz starting camp. He went to his own Instagram and posted like him putting on some gloves. So I mean, it's looking like Nate Diaz is getting ready to fight somebody. I'm still kind of confused why it wouldn't be Tony Ferguson. If Tony Ferguson doesn't get that fight, I'm literally kind of confused because that means Tony Ferguson wouldn't be getting the Khabib or the Edson fight. So if Nate's coming back, I guess he's coming back to 170. I just don't understand where does that leave Tony Ferguson? Who does he fight? The 150-pound interim champion, 155-pound interim lightweight champion. I mean, I guess we have to see if Conor, I don't know. It is what it is, man. This is about Tyron Woodley and Nate Diaz. Let the full-time family know what the fuck you tell me in the comments. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOG.